When you're on stage, here's a great thing about eye contact, because eyes are the gateway to the soul. I want you to divide the audience into 3 pieces of pizza. And you start out by looking out to I take the centerpiece and I look straight at them when I'm beginning and I say, making this up, but I'm so grateful to be here today. I have the story that's going to change your life. If there is somebody that's on their phone and you see them, you look over and you go, wow, I must be doing a great job. I see you're tweeting about me. And that gets their
cool.
attention. But you can do fun things like that. And now it's really a conversation because the audience knows that you're very aware of them, that you're very engaged with them, and that you're having fun.
Is there a good balance between that person saying what they came to say versus you giving your audience what it is they want to hear? Because we do have a lot of podcasters who listen to this and people in the corporate world who interview others as well. Like, is there a balance between leading and guiding that conversation versus letting the other person take the reins and do what they like with it?
You need to remember the prime reason why you're there. What's your purpose? So one of the things that we really want to always do is keep our audience engaged. We do not want to have a conversation, and everything is a conversation, no matter what you're doing. If you're a president giving the State of the Union address, it's still a conversation with the American people. So we want that conversation to be interesting, and we want it to be something that will have our audience learning or gathering information, doing something that there's a reason they're there, and we don't want to ever let them down. I like to think about the audience as the third person in the conversation, be it if you're giving a speech, if you're making a presentation, if you are doing an interview, if you've created a video, whatever it is, you must know who your audience is. And that involves some good prep work to say, I'm speaking to, thinking about gender, think about age, think about geographic location, think about beliefs, think about cultures, think about ethnicity, you got to think about all those things when you're putting together a presentation or getting ready to interview somebody or be interviewed. And so that line is, I can sit there as an interviewer and let you tell all these stories, but is it really a conversation? And look at your audience, gauge them. Are they getting anything out of it? Are they aptly interested? Or are they all on their phones? Because you want to keep them engaged. And there's one other little factor that's really important in all of this, and it's called attention spans. How long are they in the United States today, do you think?
Like 7 or 8 seconds, right?
8 seconds. Although I think it's probably down to 7 by now. I think there should be some new research done. That's according to Microsoft, who says that's a second shorter than the time it takes a goldfish to feed. Okay, so think about that. So and it's not that you've lost them completely. It's that there's that second conversation in our head that says, when's my next meeting? Or, oh, man, did I remember to lock the door? Whatever it is, you're a little distracted. And so that means we have to bring those people back in. And there's a whole bunch of ways that you can do it, including what I see you doing right now, which is changing the images. You're making me full screen, you're dividing us into 2, you're full screen, blah, 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 blah. So it's really about, how do I keep people's interest? And that's an important thing to do too.
100%. I remember one of the best pieces of advice, going back to one of the first things you said, is I was starting my speaking journey and I was at the National Speaker Association, like I mentioned to you, and someone said, Brandon, the best thing to do when you're looking at someone in that audience is imagine that you're speaking to the version of you before you knew what it is you know now, right? Imagine you're speaking to that version of you that you can now make an impact on and reach and give that information that you could have used at that time in your life. And it was the same thing with the camera. When I started making YouTube videos, I was instructed, and it was some great advice, to look in the camera lens, because it can seem empty, like looking at just a piece of equipment. But when you envision that you're not just looking into a camera lens, you're looking into the eyes of the past version of yourself, or the eyes of the person that you really, truly want to serve, it changes the entire vibe of that communication. And at the same time, I love how you said, look around. Are people on their phones? For those of us in the corporate world who frequently deliver presentations, if people are on their phones, I've seen a lot of people at the front of the room say, hey, everyone, we need to get off our phones. Come on, no social media, stop the texting, let's focus. But it's not their fault that they're on their phones. It's
No,
not
they're
their
bored.
fault. Yeah. They're so conditioned by.
Yeah. I mean, we're so used to that stimulating. Everything is about being stimulated. So you've got to figure out, how can I be more stimulating? So you made two distinctions there. You talked about looking into the camera. That's for when you're on video. But and I always, throughout my television career, I always imagined somebody on the other side of that camera. In my case, it was one of my aunts who was one of my biggest supporters, and I knew that if I did something wrong, she'd be there to critique me, etc. But I always envisioned I was talking to her. So I think it's really good to do that if you are doing an interview of some sort. Now, I want to caution you, if you're being interviewed by somebody else, you're not sure which camera is going to be on you. So you always want to keep your eyes on the interviewer in that situation. When you're on stage, here's a great thing about eye contact, because eyes are the gateway to the soul. I want you to divide the audience into 3 pieces of pizza. And you start out by looking out to I take the centerpiece and I look straight at them when I'm beginning, and I say, making this up, but I'm so grateful to be here today. I have the story that's going to change your life. After the end of that phrase, I turn to either the right or left, and I give another phrase, and then I will turn to the other side of the audience and do another phrase. And then I start individually looking at people. That keeps them engaged. I'm sure many members of your audience have been to presentations or speeches or something where the person on stage may never look at the left side of the room. Mm-hmm. And what do you feel? Completely left out. And by the way, so many of us in our virtual or hybrid situations now, where we might have meetings where, let's just say, we've got 5 people on a Zoom screen, and then we've got 5 people in the room. You got to make sure you're looking at those people that are there virtually as well, because I've had so many complaints that they feel left out.
How do you do that? How do you look at people in that virtual setting and include them as if they were there in person?
Well, one of the things you can do is it's simple body language. You can go to and a lot of these rooms that I've seen these things set up, and usually there's one big, large screen where you might have 5 or 6 people on it, something like that. Mm-hmm. So you can, and then there's people in the room that are probably sitting around the conference table, and you might be at this far side of it. So you can look at the people in the room, but then look up at the screen, and there's nothing wrong with individually calling them out. Hey, Sarah, you want anything to add? Or I saw you nodding. What do you think? It's obvious you're agreeing with me on this point. Can I have your thoughts? So be aware that they need to be included just like everybody else that's in the room. And it can be very disconcerting. We're in a little bit of a trying time with this stuff. So try it, see what you can make work, because you want them all to feel included and that they are important parts of whatever meeting or presentation or whatever it is that's going on.
That's a huge rabbit hole we could go down, and maybe we'll touch more on it, because even 3 years after Zoom became a very new and a very normal part of our culture, and this idea of virtual meetings, I still see a lot of people who they're doing Zoom calls from their messy bedroom. They're doing Zoom calls with things behind them. They're dressed in pajamas and so many different things we could talk about. They've got a blurry camera. Their microphone's not that great. It's like, it's been 3 years now since this has been.
Get it together, folks.
Exactly. So maybe we could talk about that specifically, but it's fascinating to me how when you're in that room, a lot of the fear for me at the beginning when I started to give presentations was there's a lot of people in front of me. Mm-hmm. And that advice that you gave of looking at that group and splitting it into chunks in several ways, splitting into the 3 pieces, like you said, taking the large group of people and one group. And you can do that even if there's 300 people in the room, 500 people, right?
And it's so effective. And I'll tell you what happens. Like if there is somebody that's on their phone, and you see them, you look over and you go, wow, I must be doing a great job. I see you're tweeting about me. And that gets their cool attention. But you can do fun things like that. Now it's really a conversation, because the audience knows that you're very aware of them, that you're very engaged with them, and that you're having fun. And you're not doing it in a mean way. You're just simply saying, hey, come on.
Yeah.
Listen up here because I got something really good to tell you. When you call
Yes.
people out, I'm telling you, they stop.
Something I found helps too is just walking over and standing by them, like
Mhm.
moving yourself physically to that side of the room. And when you're right next to them, they're going to be less apt to be on their phone. But again, if they're on their phone, then it's likely that we're not keeping them engaged. And there's one big pet peeve of mine, and I can guarantee it's one of yours too. It's when you go to a presentation and the individual is dry. The individual is not taking it seriously. The
Yep.
individual is treating it as a meeting that has to be done. And
Mhm.
in my book, one of the reasons why I loved the role that I played for a long time inside of Verizon Wireless is I would help the leaders to be more engaging
Mhm.
and look at it not just as a meeting that has to happen, but look at it as how can we provide the best experience for the people who are going to be here today, because they don't want to drive several hours to be here, stay overnight for a
Mhm.
conference, whatever it might be. They truly want to be entertained, but people also don't expect to be entertained. So when it happens, you're leaving them with an emotional impression that they're going to remember for a long time. And we, as the communicator, have the opportunity to make that happen for them. But especially with TikTok nowadays
Mhm.
and the attention span going down and down from 8 seconds to 7 seconds. And in a year, it's probably going to be 5 seconds. It's just the reality. TikTok, Reels, Vines, all these different things are decreasing our attention span to where we're scrolling, we're getting the next hit, scrolling, getting the next hit. So that
Mhm.
when we're in real conversation, if we as the communicators are waiting 30 seconds for a transition or something exciting to happen, we're going to lose their attention fast. How do you help, especially these executives who they don't believe communications their most important thing to improve in? Like, how do you help these individuals engage people in this short attention span culture?
Well, there's a bunch of things that you just said in there that I'd want to unwrap. First of all, when you talk about leaders or presenters who are disengaged and are not really putting their all into the presentation, I'd like to scold them all, but that's not a good thing to do. But I want you to focus. I want people to think about this. You're there for a purpose. You're the expert in the room on whatever subject you are giving them. You should be not only giving them your all, but you should be excited about it and you should be purposeful. So focus on the purpose and remind yourself you're the expert in the room. You may be the only person that can give them that kind of information in that moment. And so when you focus on that, it really helps you become a better presenter. Then I want you to put yourself in their shoes. What on earth would compel them to sit there and listen to you if you're, hello, I want to tell you today about this wonderful opportunity we have. I mean, come on. And then if you're not capable of being a good presenter, then just don't do it. You've got a job, you've got something you're supposed to be doing well. Do it. So focusing on purpose is important. Secondly, if you're doing things like making a presentation with slides, get rid of all that data that's on there because the human brain can't focus on it. Make it fun, make it lively, use a lot of images, which again will get people to go, wow, that was so cool. And then it's got to be interactive. And
Mm,
you and the way that you make it interactive is by making it a conversation, a real conversation. You're not the lecturer and they're not, and maybe they may be students of some sort in here, but in a professional world, they are peers, or they might even be bosses, or they might be people that are younger than you that you've got to help guide through it. So respect them, respect your audience, give it your all. It's the least you can do. And by the way, most of the time you're getting paid to do it. Like, come on, right?
exactly. I love what you said about how being shy is a fear of judgment,
Yes.
because that's something that's not frequent in my life, but especially when I'm in the room with people who are playing the game at a bigger level than me, the room that I should be in most of the time, I am more shy. And I've always wondered, like, is this because I'm an introvert? And even looking back, I had been a shy person, especially at new jobs. I'd been the shy person at the company I'm with now for over 10 years. For the first year, I was a very shy person. And it's not because I didn't enjoy conversation with people, because I did, and I would open up with certain types of people. But have you ever been a shy person?
Oh, yeah.
And how do you move past that fear of judgment? Because I feel like that's a very important piece of this idea of communication.
Well, I have to honestly say part of it, Brandon, is I got old. Uh, you know what? When you are young, and young is relative. You know, I realize that, but just think about junior high kids, for example. Some of the shyest people on earth. I think most of us know Maslow's hierarchy. Couldn't think of the name for there for just a second. You know, at the very basic level, we're concerned with survival, and then there is the let's see, I can't remember the next level, but the middle level there's love and belongingness, and then there is the need to be looked up to, and at the peak is self-actualization. Well, if you have your survival needs not met, you don't really care what other people think about you. You know, that very basic level of survival. Okay. Wish I could remember what that second level is. I'm sure that our listeners can look that up really quick.
I'm going to share it real quick because I like.
Okay, great. Yeah, pull that up. Thank you. And I'll go on and mention that I think a lot of junior high kids, there we are. Okay, so safety needs. Yes. So if we don't feel safe, we don't care whether we're included in the group or not. I think by the time we reach junior high, we have maybe a basic feeling of safety, but we have a great need to be included. I don't know about you, Brandon. I did some pretty stupid stuff when I was in junior high and high school, just because that's what all the others were doing. I bet your mother used to say, if your friends were going to jump off a bridge, would you do it too? Yeah. At that point, yeah. Okay. When I got older, what was that fourth level? If you can pull that graphic back up again.
Fourth level. So it's physiological, which is survival, and then safety, love and belonging, and then esteem.
Esteem. There we are. The esteem needs that level is for, we have a need for other people to look at us and to think that we're smart, we know what we're doing, we're competent, whatever. Okay, I want you to notice an implication in that level. The need for other people to view me as competent. Okay, it's a step up from the group thing. So when I'm in junior high, maybe, and I'm not feeling included in the group, I'll do stupid stuff just to be included.
Yeah.
But when I feel those needs met somehow, then I'm more likely at that next level to want people to think I'm smart. The things that I did in junior high that I really don't want anybody to know about now.
Yeah.
Okay. But it's still focused on other people. There's a difference between me wanting people to view me as competent and viewing myself as competent. That's that self-actualization level. Okay, so bringing it back and what we were talking about was shyness. You know, when you're in junior high, maybe young adulthood or whatever, we are really concerned with being included in the group and what do other people think about us.
Yeah.
I made a smart aleck remark about I got old, but that really is part of it, and that can happen at any age. When you reach a point to where you're more concerned in how you feel about yourself than in what other people think of you.
Wow.
Now, this almost sounds contradictory because a little earlier we were talking about being focused on your audience as opposed to on yourself. But this is a different sort of focus that we're talking about here.
So how do you do that? How do you move into self-actualization from worrying about what others are thinking?
It does take time. It takes spending time with yourself. I think a big part of my personal journey has been spending time in meditation. I've been a meditator of some sort since 1979.
Wow.
Which, wow, it's amazing to me how long ago that was now. But, you know, that's not, it's not something that you do over a weekend. It is spending time with yourself, not avoiding yourself, which may sound kind of odd. I can remember as a kid, which keep in mind that would have been in the 1960s. We had 3 television channels back then. And I'm not just talking about being old here, you know, but when people, well, let me just tell the quick story here. I noticed that my mother would run the air conditioner even if it wasn't hot. She was just trying to get some noise going. And I was about 7 years old, I guess. And I said, Mom, why do you run that thing? And in a rare moment of transparent honesty, not putting my mom down, it's just she didn't reveal this kind of thing very much. She said, well, I'll tell you, when it's quiet, I get to thinking. And when I get to thinking, I get depressed. So I run something just to distract me. Now, I don't have to tell you, Brandon, or our listeners here, we've got these things. We've got these things that you and I are staring at right now. We've got cable TV. We've got streaming. There are so many distractions. The philosopher Blaise Pascal once said, all of humanity's problems stem from an inability to sit quietly in a room alone.
Wow.
And that's always been an impactful statement to me. I think most of us spend our time distracting ourselves so that we don't have to get uncomfortable. Now, I'm going to go just a little different direction here, Brandon. All of us have heard of the learning curve. May not realize the learning curve consists of 4 segments. Okay, now if I had graphics here, I would draw a curve and we can divide it up into 4 segments. The first segment is a comfortable place to be. That is unconscious incompetence. We don't know what we don't know. Do you remember being, 10 years old and thinking it was a conspiracy that the adults wouldn't let you drive?
Yeah.
It looks simple. There's a wheel, there's a pedal, there's another pedal. How hard could it be? I've been playing video games with this for years. We don't know what we don't know. That's a comfortable place to be. I learned on a stick shift when I learned to drive. Did you happen to, Brandon?
I didn't. I actually never learned how to drive standard, but I did learn how to drive a motorcycle, which is very similar, I'm told.
Yes. Trying to keep straight on which gears do I pull up and which do I push down. Yeah.
Yep.
Similar kind of thing. I learned on a stick shift. And so I found out just exactly what I didn't know. And so you have to consciously think about everything you do. Let's see, you step on this pedal, you move this stick up here, you give it a little gas, you let out on this pedal, you do like this, and then you start the car again because you just killed it. That's an uncomfortable place. This is called conscious incompetence. You're smacked in the face with what you don't know. And a lot of people quit right there because they think they should be better at it. The third stage is conscious competence. Now, in this one, I'm not killing the car. I'm driving the car, but everything I do, I have to consciously think about. Every time I shift gears, I have to consciously think about it. And I think this is the stage that got me on to talking about this right now, because we were talking about how do you get past that fear of judgment. This third stage is also uncomfortable. You've got some competence, but it's not as smooth. It's not as easy as you think that it should be. And so a lot of people quit right there. But if we push through that, we get to that 4th stage, which is unconscious competence. Now you can drive around the parking lot, steer with one hand, let down the window with the other, chew gum, talk on the cell phone all at the same time, because you don't have to consciously think about everything that you're doing. Yeah. And that's a comfortable stage. Now, notice with this curve here, comfortable on each end, but the middle is uncomfortable. So, just because you're uncomfortable doesn't mean that you're learning. But if you're learning something, it's almost certain you will be uncomfortable. As a culture, we're not really good with uncomfortable. So coming back to your question, how do you get past that fear of judgment? It's sort of like what Susan Jeffers said, feel the fear and do it anyway. Feel the discomfort and do it anyway.
Wow.
It's not just pushing through, but you have to recognize you got to go through the conscious incompetence and the conscious competence in order to get to the unconscious competence. That's where I don't worry about what the audience is thinking of me. I am focused, though, on connecting with the audience, on serving the audience.
Yes.
Coming right back to Bob Berg again, if we keep our focus on the other person, then it takes the nerves out of me. It makes networking comfortable because I'm not focused on myself. In fact, pretty soon I forget about the fact that I'm networking. I know we're running short of time here, Brandon, so let me just throw this out there. Stop networking and just make friends. I know you know that. You know that at this point in your life. So, for our listeners, stop networking. Just make friends. It's not about how do I get my elevator speech out there. Elevator speeches are almost useless because when you first connect with somebody, they don't care. And I got to give credit where credit's due. I learned that phraseology and that pacing from Bob Berg. He's absolutely right. They don't care. They're thinking about their own elevator speech.
Yes.
So put your focus on them. Bob has a thing he calls his 10 feel-good questions, but they're just conversation starters. So the first one that Bob recommends is, of course, you find out what they did. And like, if I were just meeting you, how it's a genuine curiosity question. How did you get started in the path that you're taking here? You asked me a similar question earlier. It's a natural question.
Those listening know what Toastmasters is. If you're a newcomer, you can look up what Toastmasters is, but it's a public speaking organization that doesn't just help you with your communication and speaking, but it helps you in your leadership capacity as well. So it's great for those inside of companies. And a lot of big companies actually offer a Toastmasters club that's inside the company. And, like not all of them, but many do. And even if they don't, there's many clubs locally to you. So my question is, I'd like to go back to that meeting. And because you're right, it doesn't necessarily happen the same way that it used to, where a vendor or someone from the outside or even someone on the inside can make a comment to you that is rude or derogatory or discriminative, if that's the word. It doesn't happen the same way, but it can certainly still happen, right? And my question for you is, in that corporate world where you have all these other colleagues around you, you're looking to make a name for yourself, you're looking to continue your growth. How did you handle that then? And what would you suggest to someone who struggles with that? Maybe they're coming from a different culture, or they have a disability, or they're just different. How would you suggest that they react or handle a situation such as that? Because that's important in the corporate world.
Right. I mean, yes, it is very, very important. And nowadays you have what we call allies in the corporate world. So if somebody were to speak rudely to you in an open setting, like I experienced, people would come to your defense or pull that person aside and say, we are so sorry this happened to you. Then go talk to the other guy who was rude. There are avenues now, right? So it's a tough, you have to pick your battles, Brandon.
Yes.
You cannot be overly sensitive about somebody speaking to you rudely. But there is, again, in my book, I talk about strategies of how to deal with people. Now, take, for example, to make any immigrant's journey, assimilation journey, a little easier, is the first thing I say is recognize that you have an accent. Having an accent is not a bad thing, but do not continue speaking in the pace in which you're speaking, because that's not a sign of respect. A sign of respect is slowing down, giving people time, giving their ears time to acclimate to an accent. And then figure out, what's causing, like, let me tell you, but I was a little bit more blessed. I went to an English speaking school, so that helped me. It was not learning a brand new language. For others, it's a little harder.
Yes.
But in general, I say, do your part, navigate the waters. And, in the book, it's a general strategy, not necessarily for an outsider coming in, is be a good listener, pay attention to the room, figure out people's motives, figure out where each one is. But I tell you one thing, when you become socially aware, it helps you really perform better. So, very often people are in a rush for others to recognize you, validate you. And I say, take that inward focus, make it outward focus. You know how you get pulled into a room and how you feel included
Yeah.
is just validate the other people. Now, it might seem counterintuitive. You want to be included, not them. But I would say make other people comfortable with you. So ask them questions about their weekend, about their family, or, establish the bond. Once you build the bond, you can become more of yourself. You don't have to shrink. And, so there are strategies, and it's a very complex subject. And I know you're not going to overcome it all with some social awareness lessons, but make sure that you're not expecting others to change. You change yourself for faster, quicker assimilation. But I tell you, more importantly, it's for other people around this new immigrant or the cultural shift. You really need allies. You need people to stand up for you.
Yes.
And I think that's important. And I'll tell you a funny thing. As I became more and more senior in my company, and I don't know what it is, it's not mean spirited. It could be a psychology thing. So people would get my name confused with another Indian woman's name. And I would be called by her name. And I was so clever one day. I kept getting called by her name. And I switched the name of this person who had a very common, I think I made Paul Bob or something like that.
Yeah.
So without telling them, without calling it out, but I just had fun with it,
Yes.
So they recognize, take your time. Think about who you're speaking to. We're not one monolith group here. We're different people. So
Yeah.
have fun with it. Don't take it. Can I tell you, there's ways and strategies to get around feeling other, the othering of people. People do that. People make you feel like the other. It's bad enough to be an immigrant, to have an accent, to look different. People will do it, but you have to be stronger to navigate the waters, because
Yes.
it's always about getting to the other side of the shore, not to get entangled and be mad and stop your progress. So anyway, long answer.
Well, I just want to say that I just want to stop and say what you just said and explained about social awareness and validating other people. That was the most important shift for me in my own corporate career. When I was 21, I tell the story a lot, so I won't go into it. But when I was 21, that was the transition from me focusing inward and only inward, always focused on me, wanting validation, loving recognition. It went from that to me having a mentor that said, Brandon, if you want to become a leader here, it's time for you to start focusing on other people, right? Focus on other people. Take care of yourself, because you have to have you can't pour from an empty cup, right? You've got to fill your cup before you can fill the cups of others. So focus on you, but while you're doing that, bond with others, build those relationships, have those conversations. And like you said, it's different for everybody. So bonding with Susie might be different than bonding with Paul, right? And you might become very close with Paul, but not with Tom. But it's different for every person. But
So
give
true.
people the validation that they seek. Because once I began giving other people validation, not false validation, not flattery, but once I actually went to each person, because I had been at this company now for 3 to 4 years. And they all knew me, right? They all knew who I was. They all knew how I operated. And I said to them, hey, listen, I realize that in the past I've said some things, or maybe I didn't say some things that I should have said to you. And I want to apologize for the way that I've actually treated you in the past. And what I'm looking to do moving forward is I want to become a leader here. And I realize to become a leader, I have to help you to get to where you want to get to. So I'm curious, how can I best support you in that role as a leader? Right. And this was before I had the title. I didn't have the title at this time. And I went to all 8 to 9 people on my team and I asked that same question. And that question alone was a game changer for me, because they realized with skepticism that I was there to help them. And then, of course, it took the hard work and it took working on the right things in order to continuously validate them and help them to get to where they want to go. So again, long answer there, but I wanted to make sure that I let you know that was the most powerful step for me in my own personal career.
Right. And I tell you, you're spot on. And this whole social awareness thing, and, it's almost counterintuitive. Like when you want to be validated, you go validate somebody else. It's a big chapter in my book because there's even one where we talk about, again, another very counterintuitive thing. If you just shift the focus, because I tell you, some people, just like how I used to be in my old career when I was starting off. Like, I'm like, look at me, look at me. Why don't you value what I've contributed? Shift that whole storyline, focus on somebody else. Because if you're sitting in a conference room and there's a tendency when somebody lower down the rank is speaking or sharing some idea or something, everybody else just pretends to listen, nod their head, and they move on. And I say, no, that's your time to have listened carefully, ask them a follow-up question, so accurate a follow-up question because you were listening so deeply, you understood what they were saying, you validated the other person, and suddenly you start looking like a leader. It's, people are looking at you like, whoa, because all the others are saying, oh, this person is just talking, let's move on to the next person. I'm saying, stop it, ask the question, you help somebody else, and you also help your cause. So that's one. The other thing is when you're feeling down, you're feeling unappreciated. The other suggestion I make, I'm giving my book away, but it's okay. The other suggestion I have is very counterintuitive, but do something when you're mad at, say, whoever about not getting ahead. Get into the spirit of service. Start helping other teams, people, because that's how you shift the storyline. Instead of coming across bitter, just say, you know what, I'm just going to shift to service now. Start volunteering, helping people in another department, saying, hey, are you guys overloaded? I have bandwidth. Can I help you? All these little things will start shifting the storyline because you want ambassadors for you across the company. And your connections should spread. People should speak highly of you. And if you're always bitter and angry, guess what's going to happen? It'll show up in your aura. People think I'm on a Zoom window, I'm at home. Nobody sees it, but it does show. Your tone of voice will show. You're dissatisfied. I see people sitting in low energy rooms with no light. It just looks like I'm just checking in, checking out. So when you're feeling the worst, maybe take some time to grieve, but jump on the bandwagon of service, help other people shine, show up with vibrancy. And if you start asking yourself, if weeks go by and you're still feeling down, in a way, it's hurting your progress because you start showing up as a disgruntled employee. And nothing hurts your cause more than that. So what you have to work on is a mindset to say, you know what, I may be unhappy, but I'm going to shift to, you can rewire your brain, shift to a positive mindset, because the moment I start showing up as a happy person, guess what? You become a people magnet,
I'd like to ask you specifically about the time that you were in after the restructure and you realizing I have to find a new opportunity, because 2 months to discover a lot of these different things, to discover a different way to be, to really unpack what you want to do next. 2 months isn't a long time. Like I've been off the last 2 months because quote unquote off, I've stepped back a bit just because our baby son was just born, and
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And he's almost 2 years, he's almost 2 months old now, and it flew by. So 2 months isn't a long time. Like what did you do after the restructure in order to really discover what's next for you, to dive into these different energy healings and these different philosophies? Like, how did you move forward? Because I know people listening who just went through a restructure on their own and they're wondering, what do I do next? So let's speak to those people. How do you decide what to do next moving forward?
Yep. Wow. Great questions. Wow. And I would say you're right. 2 months flies by, especially when you're sleep deprived with a child.
That's very true. Yep.
Yes, it was not a lot of time. So the first thing I had to get a handle on was all the fear of financial security. And it's very, very real. And I didn't have a lot in savings, I thought. And so I felt this stress response, like building, but I also knew I was not able to hop into another corporate situation. I was just too frazzled and too burnt out. So my decision was to say, I need to figure out how to pay the basics, like the mortgage and food and some of those. It really went back to the basics and look at kind of anything that we were spending that maybe could take a pause or a hold. So it was a bit of let's do an honest assessment of what it really takes for us to live the way we're living and where we're living and all of that. So that was just an important step to get grounded on where are you in your financial picture. Now, I made potentially a risky decision for some, that I decided to borrow off my 401k. And my logic there was that not a lot was returning into that at the time, given the environment. And I believed I was a good return on the investment.
Mm.
And I have been contributing into that for 30 plus years. Now, granted, I was not of an age where I could do that without some penalties. And I just searched my soul and said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it because I need to heal. And I can't heal if I'm stressed out about how I'm paying the mortgage next month.
True.
It's not going to work. And so you get resourceful, I guess. You get resourceful about, and I did look into, could a family member help me out? You know, what could I adjust? All those pieces. And I did look into all of that. And I thought, you know what? Maybe this is where this fierce independence is going to pay off. That I have been working for years, contributing into this 401k. I'm going to go ahead and draw from it. And I actually talked to a financial advisor, and interestingly, in 2021, various lending institutions were being very helpful in this regard. And there was a plan at the time where you weren't penalized if you paid that money back over a certain period of time. So that was the mechanics that I had to figure out first and foremost, was how was I going to manage that and get resourceful? How was I going to do it? It's amazing how you can call various lending institutions and ask for lower interest rate, we can be at choice when we're affected this way. And
how did that go when you called and you asked for that overall?
They were like, great. They have these programs, and it was not unusual to lose your job to that situation. And unfortunately, I think it's just becoming more common that companies tighten their belt and make these decisions. And more of us are finding ourselves in a situation where we no longer have that continuity of income. I did collect unemployment. I did. I had no issue with that. I didn't have a pride, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm at the point. I'm like, again, I have been a taxpayer contributing into systems for over 30 years. I'm in a place right now where I need to draw. It's not forever, but and it's my turn to be able to avail myself of some of these things that I have personally been contributing into all these years. And once I made that decision, I just could breathe.
Yes.
Because it's really hard to make good decisions when like your stomach is in a ball of stress and your breathing is shallow and you're like, how am I going to make this work? How am I going to make this work? And so that was huge.
Yep.
Then I thought, okay, I know how to coach. I know how to do change management. I'll just do side projects. I'll just get this up and running. And so I formed a LLC, which is pretty straightforward to do. In most states, I actually used an online filing form to set up the mechanics of the business.
Me too.
And it wasn't hard, and it was pretty straightforward. And so I put that in place so that when I started talking to people and I could pick up a project or I could do this. But I also got very resourceful on what skills do I have?
Yeah.
And there are all kinds of what I think people call side hustles that you can start to do in these interim periods, or maybe alongside what you're doing today, that just think about your skill set and how might you be able to benefit someone else who's willing to pay for that kind of service. There's everything from you can drive elderly people to medical appointments. You can grocery shop for people. There are all kinds of things that you can do to help others with a skill capability that you have. And again, I say this in the interim. It doesn't have to be like the next career move. I just want to keep contributing.
Yeah.
I want to make an impact in someone's life, and I can offer my skills right now in doing that.
It
And so
can
I
be in
thought,
addition as well to your
oh my
career. You
gosh,
can do that in addition
totally.
to that.
I didn't even think about this. And so now I'm so curious, like things come to me in the internet. I saw a feed. I never thought about this. Traveling notaries are making money. People want to close on a house. You get certified to be a notary. It doesn't cost a lot of money. You get your stamp, and then mortgage companies and lenders need these people to drive and show up at somebody's house so they can sign and notarize their closing.
Yes.
I mean,
My
you
mother, for an example, by the way, I've been in a situation where I've needed a notary,
yes,
but I wasn't able to find one or go to one, and I needed one to come to me. And my aunt, actually, I learned was one, as she came to me, and I tried to pay her. She didn't take it, but that is a great service. But my mom was a waitress for years and years and years and years and years. And then COVID happened. And then she had to figure it out because restaurants were closing down.
No.
So she started doing the Spark deliveries through Walmart, which is kind of similar to DoorDash, but honestly, much better. It's much better pay.
Yeah.
And she delivers groceries to people. And she's making $30 to $40 an hour doing that, to the point where now she hasn't had to go back to waiting tables because she has enough to sustain her lifestyle. And then my father is the main breadwinner of the family. But from what you're saying, step one was survival. You had to figure out how to alleviate this stress of what am I going to do next? And that's key, right? Because if you have that stress over you, it's going to be very difficult to take that next step. And then step two, which is very important, is to assess the skills that you have and ask yourself, how can I use these skills in order to operate, whether it's a side hustle or start a business, or what roles back in the corporate landscape or whatever it might be would be best suited for the skills that I've developed throughout my career.
Exactly. And I would say what is shifting in many companies, from what I hear, because I still have a lot of friends and colleagues within the corporation, is this whole idea of the 1099 contract employee. So oddly, the way some people manage this in companies is headcount, permanent headcount, if permanent is even a word anymore in business, but established headcount, let me put it that way, has become a challenge, but there's other funding that can pay contractors. I know it seems a little bit silly, but I think that companies more and more will bring in contracting resources to do special projects. And so I actually did sign up with an agency that specializes in placing change management professionals on projects in other companies. And so last year, I worked on a change management project for a large technology company that was rolling out a new system internally through a merger and acquisition. And I know how to do that. I know how to create, learner education and communication and all of these things. And it's something I did in my career 20 years ago. And that's okay. It still has value. I still want to help people be successful through change. And I had to roll up my sleeves and maybe create some job aids and some things that I hadn't done in a while, but I flexed that muscle, dusted it off, and was able to contribute. And so there are organizations, I've recently learned of one called Flex Jobs online. And these, again, are for people who want to either supplement their existing situation with a side hustle where you can basically sign up and you can see projects. If you have any graphic animation capability, there are all kinds of projects out there that people are looking to hire freelance people who have that capability to create a logo, to do design, to format and make handouts look
social media.
glossier. Oh my gosh, there's such opportunity. And so it is, like you said, assess. And also I encourage it to be something you are natural at or good at and you don't mind doing.
Yes.
This is not about, oh my gosh, I'm now going to have to go do this again. Like, did I like the idea that I was going to be doing something I had done 20 years ago in my career? Initially, it was a bit, I got a little grumpy about it. I got to be honest. I'm like, really, really, really? This is where I am in my life. I'm going back to what I was. And then I'm like, but it's okay. Again, it's not forever. I'm not going back forever. I'm going back to lend a skill and talent. So here's the next thing I think, Brendan, is your mindset around it is so important, because I could go into it being, the world stinks and isn't this awful? And now I'm, 20 years are lost and I'm back doing what I was doing in my 30s and I can't even believe it. I can take that approach to my energy and my emotion or my mindset, or I can reframe it and say, this is temporary. This is resourcefulness. You still know how to do that. And then I actually get a little competitive with myself and I go, impress yourself.
Yeah.
Show yourself that you still have this, that you can do it. Or drive. I got a car. I'm paying a lease payment on it. Why not go take elderly people or any people that don't have transportation to a medical appointment? Just seems to be more of an elder care thing where I'm living here now. But why not? Why wouldn't I lend that resource that I am paying a monthly payment on to do that?
Sure.
And so I think it's our mindset, ego. I'm collecting unemployment. Now, again, I was, not anymore, but I was. And I think we can really do a number on ourselves up here that this is a bad thing. This is wrong. Look at me. I'm dipping down. I'm just going backwards. I can't believe this. Yes, you can look at it that way. And you could look at it as a stepping stone to open it up. And now this whole idea of multiple lines of income is very appealing to me. Whereas in the past, I wanted all my eggs in one basket, Brandon. Get the company, get the 401k, get the benefits, the one salary. But look how risky that can be.
Yep.
And so now I've got a couple of lines to my business. Like you said, I coach, I do energy healing, I do change management projects. I have some other passion projects I'm looking into. And I love it because then I'm not solely dependent on one stream. I have multiple streams and they're all varied and interesting to me. I don't think I would want to do any one of them completely. Maybe. I do love the coaching, I have to say. If I could just make that the full thing, which it just isn't yet. So when you say, it takes time, it's 3 years in the making and it's growing and growing, but it's not at the stage that it is the one source. But given everything I've learned, I don't know if one stream of income is a good idea for me anymore.